Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Gauranga, the Golden Incarnation of Divine Love, written by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. We are going to begin the section 2, which is Navadvipa and Youth Pastimes. Schooling pastimes. An astrologer told Lord Chaitanya's father, Jagannath Mishra, that his elder son would take sannyas. He was afraid that maybe Lord Chaitanya would take sannyas too. So he thought that one way of stopping this would be that he shouldn't be educated. Let him remain uneducated and just stay in the house. Lord Chaitanya wanted to go to school and be educated, but because his parents wouldn't let him, he became very naughty. He was maybe only 5 years old, but he really wanted to go to school. So he would run around and do many naughty things. He would go to a neighbor's house and put water in the baby, and the baby would start crying. He would go to the Ganges, and when he would bathe in the Ganges, sometimes he would take all the men's clothes and mix them with the ladies' clothes. When they came out, it was very embarrassing. Sometimes some Brahmanas would be chanting his Gayatri Mantra, and Lord Chaitanya would come out of the water, take water from the Ganges and spit on him. The Brahman would say, "What are you doing?" They would be very offended. And sometimes he would pull people's legs from under them while they were trying to say their mantras in the Ganges. All kinds of little things. Of course, since he was Krishna, it was actually a blessing. But they were just seeing the external, a very naughty boy. Another time, a Brahman was going down to the Ganges with a little banana leaf plate with some incense, tulsi leaves, flowers, a little lamp, and some different things for puja. He wanted to recognize his plate from everybody else, because more or less everybody's plate looked the same. So he took a little ball of Ganges mud, rolled it up and put it on his plate. Then Lord Chaitanya put balls on everybody's plates and confused them. He would do anything he could to put pressure on his parents to send him to school. In those days, they used to cook in terracotta pots. You may think this is a very ancient practice or a kind of rustic thing, but actually it is a much more advanced system. They didn't have to wash pots. The pots are disposable and biologically degradable. There was no plastic or aluminium, but a nice clay, which is very good for cooking. It gives an even heat. After the cooking, there was a little place in the backyard where they would throw their clay pots. Then later they would cover it with dirt and the pots would recycle into the earth. One time Lord Chaitanya was standing on those clay pots and Mother Shachi said, "What you are doing? That is garbage pit, a dirty place." She said it was ashuchi. Shuchi means pure and ashuchi means impure place. So now I know. So I've been making mistakes in my earlier comments somewhere else. I've been saying shuchi means shuchi is pure and ashuchi is impure. Sometimes muchi, it's called muchi as well. So we can say the earliest recycling was done always in ancient Vedic civilization. So there was only clay utensils used for cooking, and once the cooking was done, no need to wash, they were just thrown away and they would just recycle, actually biodegrade. Then the Lord replied to his mother, "What do I know about shuchi or ashuchi? I'm not able to go to school. Remember, I'm just an ignorant child. I'm not able to learn all these things. because you are not letting me to go to school. So what do I know? For all I know is this is as good as any other place. He was always trying to make his parents send him to school. So finally Mother Shachi said, so I shouldn't say Sachi, I just noticed the diacritic on the S, so it should be said Shachi. Shachi said, how can we stop him going to school? He really wants to go. Whatever his karma is, we can't really stop it as parents. So finally they let him go to school. On the first day Lord Chaitanya went to school, he learnt all the Sanskrit consonants and vowels. Just like in English, we have the alphabet, so in Sanskrit and in Bengali there is also the alphabet. It is the same alphabet in Bengali and Sanskrit, only the pronunciation of a few syllables is little different. Otherwise, it is pretty much the same. The characters are a little more round, otherwise the alphabets are same. Sanskrit is a phonetic alphabet. Every letter is a particular sound. If we can spell it, then we can speak it. Not like English. The way English letters are pronounced can be completely different in different words. But in Bengali and Sanskrit, if you know the spelling, you can pronounce the word. It is always the same pronunciation. There are no irregularities as far as the alphabet is concerned. When Lord Krishna was present on earth, he went to Gurukul in Ujjain. At the ashram of Sandipani Muni. And he learned everything in 64 days, 64 arts, 64 the Puranas and all the Vedic knowledge. In the same way, when Lord Chaitanya went to school, the first day he learnt all the akshars, that is the Sanskrit letters. The very next day he learned all the compound letters, which usually takes much longer. He learned so many combinations in just one day. Like that, every day he was finishing so much, so by the time he was 11, he was already a master. Of course, the Lord already knows everything, but it is significant that he learned everything just to give the example that one must study to learn. He is the source of all the knowledge. Vedanta Krid Veda Vid Eva Chaham. This is from Bhagavad-Gita 15.15. Chapter 15, verse 15. He is the source of knowledge, source and the purpose of the Vedas, the maker of the Vedas and the knower of the Vedas. He knows all these subjects. Lord Chaitanya and the parrot. One of the reasons Lord Chaitanya descended was to distribute his process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. His other purpose was that he wanted to experience that his devotees felt for him, and the only way to really experience this was to become his own devotee. So when he came, he didn't let anyone address him as Lord. Rather, he took the humble role as a servant of the Lord, as a devotee. So Lord Chaitanya descended to distribute the process of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and he wanted to experience what his devotees felt for him, and this is how what Krishna did. Krishna became his own devotee. Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya. So Krishna, when he came as Lord Chaitanya, the purpose was to give the process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In the Prema Vivarta, Jagadanand Pandit explains that one day he was with Lord Chaitanya when they were children going to school, and they were running by the side of Alaknanda Ganges. At that time, there was one river on the Mayapur side that was called Alaknanda. Now it is almost dried up. When we take devotees there on parikrama, you can see water in some places and you can see the bed of the river. It runs between the Jalangi river and Ganges, Bhagirathi. This Alaknanda was a very active river which flowed near the Harihar Kshetra, which is an important temple of Vishnu and Shiva. Half the deity is Vishnu and half the deity is Shiva. So Hari is Vishnu and Har is Harihar. Har is Shiva. It is described that Vishnu manifested his deity there to show Lord Shiva that he was not different from him. So one day Lord Chaitanya and Jagadananda Pandit were coming from the school when the Lord saw a parrot and said, "Oh, this parrot is not different from the Shukadev Goswami." Shukadev spoke the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. He asked parrot, "Please tell us the glories of Radha and Krishna," but instead the parrot chanted, "Gaura, Gaura." Lord Chaitanya covered his ears. No, I wanted you to chant the glories of Radha and Krishna. Why are you chanting this? Please chant Radha Krishna." But again the parrot began to chant, "Gaura, Gaura, Gaura, Gaura." "What is wrong with you?" said Lord Chaitanya. "This place is not different from Vrindavan, so you should chant the glories of Radha and Krishna here." Then the parrot spoke. It was a spiritual parrot, so he could speak, and he said, "You see, Radha and Krishna have combined together here in the form of Gauranga. So I wanted to chant Radha and Krishna as Gaura. If you want to chant in some other way, you can do that, but I am going to chant Gaura, Gaura, because for me Radha and Krishna is Gaura." And he kept chanting Gaura, 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 Gaura. The parrot was able to understand the actual position of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahe Anya. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a combination of Radha and Krishna. So this Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. Not only he is Radha and Krishna, not only is he coming in this material world to relish the internal pastime, but he is coming to give us the mercy, to give us this mercy of Hare Krishna or Krishna consciousness. So that's why sometimes we see the devotees, they like to say Gauranga as a greeting, because Gauranga Mahaprabhu was more merciful than Krishna himself. He came as a combined incarnation of Radha and Krishna. Of course, when we say Hare Krishna, it's same. It's Hare. Hara is Radharani and Krishna is Krishna. So I think the mercy flows similar, but through Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the mercy flew more easily to everybody. Everybody was given the holy name, no matter where you came from, what your birth from, where your birth was from, regardless of any background of society any part of society you belong to. The Lord teaches his students. Although some of his followers were older, Lord Chaitanya himself was very young and he began teaching. He was a child prodigy. By the age of 11, Lord Chaitanya was equivalent of a PhD and became the professor of his own school. At this young age, he was already the greatest teachers in India. By the time he was about 14, he was very famous and was known as Nimai Pandit. He had thousands of students and he would sit by the side of the Ganges and all the students would be around him and he would teach them the Sanskrit grammar, Sanskrit Kavi, poetry, and all the different aspects of Sanskrit, Shastra, Nyaya, different methods of coming to proper logical conclusions and debating. He was very strict and made sure that all his students followed their daily sadhana, chanting their Gayatri and putting on tilak. Gayatri Mantra is especially important in our spiritual development. It helps us to control the mind and helps us to be able to meditate on the Lord. It is recommended that we have the Gayatri Mantra. Prabhupada said that it is not absolutely essential. We could go back to Godhead just by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But the Gayatri Mantra is very helpful for our spiritual progress. The Gayatri Mantra is also non-different from Krishna. The Kama Gayatri is non-different from the flute sound of Krishna. The Pancharatrika mantras help us in our spiritual progress, and most of the associates of Lord Chaitanya chanted their Gayatri Mantra. In Brahminical culture, one first gets the Upanayanam. Upanayanam is the first Gayatri that we get in our Gayatri Mantras. Generally, it is given to the children studying the Vedas, and later on they get the other Pancharatrika mantras when they are more mature in their spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya insisted that everybody should wear tilak when they come for class. If somebody showed up without wearing tilak, he had them stand up in front of all other students, which is very humiliating. He would say, "Why don't you have tilak? Without tilak, your forehead is like a crematorium. It means that you must not have taken your morning bath, chanted your Gayatri Mantra. If you had done all of these things, then you would have your tilak. It is part of the morning duties." So the student would take his bath, put on his tilak, say Gayatri, and then come back to school. Due to the kind of embarrassment that students were careful to always come with tilak and have chanted their mantras, after a couple people like that were sent back home, everybody would come with tilak. Lord Chaitanya insisted on these things. To study the Vedas, you have to also purify your mind with the Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri purifies the mind so we can think more purely about Krishna. And in order to chant Gayatri properly, first one has to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and get purified. Then one can effectively chant the Gayatri Mantras, which then help us to advance further in our Krishna consciousness. Tilak is a way of dedicating our body to be a temple. Keeping Krishna in the heart, it is mentioned in the Vedas as Dwadash Urdhva Pundra. There are different kinds of tilaks, but when the tilak is going upwards, it is called Urdhva, and Dwadash means 12. There are 12 parts of the body that we place tilak on with different mantras. Devotees, especially those who are sheltered or initiated, should put on tilak. If you can't put on Gopi Chandan because you have to go to work or something, you can put it on with water, but you should say the mantras. The mantra is what gives you the protection for Krishna. So Guru Maharaj has kindly told everyone that if we are going to work and we just can't put the tilak on our forehead, on the rest of the parts of bodies we can put with the chandan, Gopi Chandan, but on the forehead we can put it with the water. Have the water tilak for going out. There is a whole chapter in the Padma Puran about Gopi Chandan tilak. In the spiritual world and even some celestial planets, everybody wears tilak. It is the sign that they are Vaishnavas. Devotees, Bhakti Yogis, when somebody sees the tilak, it reminds them of the spiritual world. It has a very purifying effect. Nimai Pandit and the residents of Navadvipa. When Lord Chaitanya was known as Nimai Pandit, he would walk around Navadvipa town followed by his students. He was the leading scholar of this scholarship city. Most people didn't know that he was a divine personality, but somehow everybody had natural affection for him. They would say, "Look, there goes the famous child prodigy, the youthful Pandita." And after finishing his class, Lord Chaitanya would go to the Ganges, take his bath and enjoy some swimming sports. After taking his bath, he would go home, sit down and take the wonderful prasadam, which was cooked by Mother Shachi. He would have a big mound of rice with shukta, bitter, spinach, shak, different types of green leafy vegetables, every kind of churcheries, purposely charred vegetables, and various kinds of other vegetables and preparations. Mother Shachi would be very satisfied to see Lord Chaitanya taking prasadam. Then the Lord would walk around Navadvipa town with his students, defeating all kinds of scholars in discourses about the scriptures. Yet because of his gentle behavior, none of them were unhappy. Lord Chaitanya gradually collected literally hundreds of students, although he was only 12 or 13 years old. Even then he was almost fully grown. His height was 7 feet tall. He is known as Ajanu Lambita Bhuja. That means his arms reached down to his knees when he is standing up. He is very tall and he is very beautiful to look at. He has all the good qualities. Lord Chaitanya was so expert that he would explain all the scriptures and Sanskrit grammar by different types of stories. In this way, Lord Chaitanya would study with his students for about 6 hours a day, and later he would go for a walk around the town with them. Many of them were much older than him, but he was so brilliant, he was the leader. Lord Chaitanya would walk around the town and he would meet different scholars. He would immediately would say, "Oh my dear Brahmana, my dear Pandita, how are you today? Please let me learn something from you." Then he would ask a question that was so difficult that the person couldn't answer. Or if they answered, then Lord Chaitanya would say, "Oh, your answer is wonderful. It is filled with good points and also filled with defects." Then he would point out the good points and defects, and the person would see the defects in his own work. Then Lord Chaitanya would analyze it in a different way and show these defects were also actually good points. In this way, they would all accept defeat from Lord Chaitanya. Actually, he had a perfect understanding of Sanskrit and all the Shastras, but at this time, Lord Chaitanya was mainly teaching his students Sanskrit grammar. Krishna's pastime was a cowherd boy, but Lord Chaitanya's pastime was a Brahmana, which means education, puja, bathing and culture. Cowherd boy means milk products, calves, forests and feasts among the kids, as Lord Ramchandra was showing his pastime as Kshatriya, killing demons, and Krishna was showing his childhood as a cowherd boy. Lord Chaitanya was having pastimes as a Brahman scholar. In this way, he was capturing the minds of all the young students. He was very famous for using logic in debate. He could defeat anybody's point, prove their point again in another word, and then again defeat it. That was his skill. I will repeat. Lord Chaitanya was very famous for his logic in debate. He could defeat anybody's point, prove their point again in another way, and then again defeat it. That was his skill. So prove the point, defeat a person's point, then prove their point again in another way, and then again defeat it. So amongst all the youths, he was very popular. Practically speaking, Lord Chaitanya's movement started as a youth movement. One day the Lord saw Mukunda, who was trying to avoid Lord Chaitanya, but the Lord called out, "Mukunda, Mukunda, why are you avoiding me?" He was caught. He thought, "I'm going to teach this Nimai Pandit now. He is just a grammarian. He doesn't understand the finer points of Sanskrit poetry. He wants everyone to follow him, but I'm going to deflate him today." Mukunda was thinking like this. Of course, later Mukunda became a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, but at this time he came and said, "Why should I follow you? You only know grammar. What do you know about Sanskrit poetry?" Then Lord Chaitanya said, "Well, you must compose some poetry, then we will see if I know anything or not." Then again the same thing happened. Mukunda made a verse and Lord Chaitanya completely dissected it and pointed out the good and bad points. Lord Chaitanya started speaking so much other poetry all of his students started laughing and Mukunda turned red. Lord Chaitanya said, "Why do you just consider this one thing? We can meet tomorrow and discuss some more poetry." And then Mukunda was thinking, if he was a pure devotee, if he was not so much into this scholastic pursuit, then I would stay with him all the time. So we'll continue from here onwards tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat, Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. Wish you all a blessed day ahead.